God, can somebody else do these lines, you know? I mean, they're just interchangeable.
I'm beyond your reach, Jem.
No.
I always thought he was going to be Ray. I actually found out recently that he, for a while, was kind of undecided between Ray and Jem, that he was kind of equally interested in both of them, which was interesting. The first time Ray was mentioned in the script, it was that exact shot was described where the camera is just kind of slowly entering into the clearing and into this man's domain, and you're kind of pulled into the vortex of like the back of his head as he's doing this manual labor, and that ended up, just the mystery of who he was just felt to me like that had to be my dad, and I wasn't, so yeah, I guess, but I think for him it was a slower process of being kind of seduced by the idea of that character.
The idea of it, for a start, when I spoke to Daniel prior to filming, and he gave me, you know, the premise of the film and what it was all about, really, to a point. And immediately I was interested, and because of his history, and it was Daniel Day-Lewis and his pedigree, you know, of course, you know, you're going to be doing a good piece of work, a fine piece of work, and you know, and then when I read the script. I think you were saying last night that a lot of scripts these days are kind of developed and constructed by committees. That everybody has to have a little say, and maybe a bit of action, a bit of this, a bit of humour, a bit of, you know, rompy-pompy or whatever. You know, and it'll all look well. And this was totally unapologetic. It came right from the heart. These two guys, Ronan Day-Lewis and his father, Daniel Day-Lewis, got together, and it was purely. Developed this very organically and very passionately and emotionally from, you know, their perspective, having outside influence, and it developed into this wonderful idea with incredible dialogue and lots of moments where nothing very much was said, and it was very unapologetic. It didn't lead you by the hand, and it tried to explain what's happening. It left the audience, it left it up to you to decide what to do. But it's not very often you get scripts like that where you can see a whole horizon of possibilities of pure acting, pure I don't know, imagination and opportunities, which not going to be frowned upon, and it's not going to be corralled into a certain style of making a picture. It just comes from the heart. It's pure emotion, and you know, and that's every actor's dream. And I think you touched upon that, didn't you? That you know, that it was so emotionally draining to read, but it was also very emotionally inspiring. And
yeah. So the script for me was the most beautiful poem, and it was perfection because it was from an artist. And as I said last night, it wasn't written by committee, and it had an innocence about it that is really rare that you get, because, as I say, sometimes people write drafts of scripts and then it's been fiddled with a lot. And I was just incredibly excited about working with a new filmmaker. There's, you know, are we going to have a rebirth here? Is it going to be, you know, are we going to have a revolution? Because I think there's some wonderful filmmakers out there, but not enough of them, and we aren't making enough films, enough for people to thrive as artists. And I felt that the character of Nessa wasn't shoehorned in as the token woman. I often read a lot of scripts where I am the wife, or I'm 48 years old, of course I'm going to be a wife, or potentially, or a mother, and that's to be expected, but sometimes they feel quite ham-fisted and kind of a token gesture. This felt very natural and organic, and I was in bits, kind of with her dilemma of, you know, having to make such an important, life-changing decision and loving two men, and the courage and the bravery of Ronan and Daniel to make a film about family, and the deep, you know, root and branch, all of that, and then on top of that you have that he's an artist. So he's a beautiful, beautiful, incredibly talented artist. And then, of course, I was excited to see how that was going to translate on screen.
So there were some, Ben and I worked really closely for a long time, just really meticulously shot listing the whole film. So we really agonized over every image and every shot, and there were certain images that I had in my head for a long time that some of the sequences I drew out, and like for instance the hailstorm sequence was it had to be very, very precise, so that was all really designed visually. What was great is we had the version of the hut on location, and then we also had a duplicate of it on a soundstage, partially for scheduling reasons, so we could shoot night scenes during the day without having to tent off the real hut, but also because we could remove a wall on the soundstage version, which allowed us to get certain shots that had been kind of our ambition to get, but we weren't sure how the actual version of the hut on location had these huge, thick stone walls that would have been like impossible to remove. So that allowed us to also enter a bit of artifice into the way we were shooting it. That was that ended up kind of informing the visual language.
I can't help you till he's telling me what happened.
We're looking at a lot of films and paintings, and music as well was a huge influence. I had a playlist that I was playing people, heads of department songs from, like a lot of shoegaze from the period, and some of these tracks, like there was this track by Brian Eno called Steinsame that was this kind of medieval synthy track that was very like mesmeric and kind of had this pagan quality that we listened to a lot. And then we looked at this book, the Book of Miracles, which was this 16th century illuminated manuscript that had all these depictions of these. It was a mixture of Old Testament images and then folkloric kind of accounts of things that supposedly actually happened, like blood rain and these massive hailstorms and kind of cosmic occurrences in the sky. And films-wise, yeah, we looked at a pretty eclectic mixture of films. We looked at Mirror, the Tarkovsky film. We looked at the third Harry Potter film, actually, for the kind of visual language in that. This film, Knife in the Water, which just for the kind of how to kind of frame these people in this contained space, and also the role of the elements in that, and Autumn Sonata just as like the kind of the cruelty of the close-up, of like the really like maintained close-up, and almost like thinking of that as a torture chamber for some of those scenes where they're just stuck in the hut together and Ray is kind of torturing Jem. But yeah, so it was a pretty wide, and then even like Studio Ghibli, like My Neighbor Totoro was actually something we were thinking about, just the kind of mystical like role of nature in that.
The Invisible Man, Ray Stoker. How long was it, brother? When you went limping off into the woods?
It's kind of the simple idea of brotherhood was kind of the thing that I was first drawn to, and it was something I was thinking about actually for a few years before we ever started working on the script together or anything together. It was kind of I have brothers, and so I was just interested in that archetype of the sibling relationship and just the tragedy of that, actually. And I thought at first it might be more of a coming of age type story, and then as I started to talk to my dad about potentially doing something together, I realized that he independently had this kind of fascination with brotherhood and the kind of silence the negative space and that silence that can carry so many different meanings in his sibling relationship, and almost that kind of telepathic communication that can happen, and the volatility of that relationship where it can just launch between kind of just like mirth and rage in seconds. So that was kind of the seed of it, and then we started to think about who the central character could be. And the idea of this man living in a state of self-banishment just kind of came to us, and him in this very isolated environment. And we just knew that he was he was in the middle of nowhere, and his estranged brother shows up after a long time of no contact, and beyond that we didn't know anything. So it was really just following the characters kind of into the dark, and they, like, their story and their intertwined past started to kind of expand and reveal itself as the actual story unfolded. So it was very different from other writing experiences I'd had in the past, because it was extremely intuitive, yeah. That first movement of Jem finding Ray's hut and arriving, and just that silent kind of surveying of each other was like one of the first things that came to us. And I think it, as you said, really set the tone in terms of both their relationship and how much of their relationship is going to be contained in that negative space, and that kind of both that hyper familiarity where they can communicate without words, but also the tension of the kind of volatile nature of that silence between them and that energy between them, and then also just the role the silence was going to play throughout the whole film.
It's when filmmakers allow characters to have moments where they don't speak, maybe it's very brave of them to do that, because oftentimes with, whether it's, I think it's kind of, there's so many different types of films, but the narrative can often be, we are explaining to the audience all the time what this person's feeling, and they're angry, therefore they're shouting, or they're challenging, or it can be a little bit on the nose, because they don't trust an audience to
exposition and all.
Yeah.
Explain the story.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God, can somebody else do these lines? Yeah. I mean, they're just interchangeable.
I understand it in television, I really do, but I don't understand it in cinema as much. But it's who's financing and why they're financing and what they're ticking, and so and I just, at the end of the day, I just want to work as well. It's like what? Yeah. So it's not like I'm going, oh, I'm not going to do that. It's like I really love working. Thank you very much. And the parts get fewer and far between for me personally, as you get older. So
What, 20 years? Why did he leave us?
Base Nessa a little bit on my mum, because my brother was a 4-2 commando in the Royal Marines and went to Afghanistan and served in on combat, and my stepdad Frank was in Northern. My brother was also in Northern Ireland as a young soldier when he was in the army. For a very, very young boy, as we'd say now. And then my stepdad Frank was in Northern Ireland in the 70s. So I grew up in that household of men going to war, or just being stationed somewhere and being lonely. So that was a bit of my mum in there as well. And I'm from Nottingham, Midlands town. But there was a sense of how I really wanted to nail this sense of the pride in the men. And I think that's a huge, huge part of Nessa, being so proud of what these men have achieved and what they went through. And people don't often understand that. The women are often forgotten in those, the women's opinion is often forgotten in those journeys. So I did a bit of a waffle there, but that was my personal, comes from lived experience, I suppose.
Yeah.